Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Define Disaster. This is Battlefield 4, and today we're going to be doing a weapon showdown between the A91, SG-553, MTAR-21, and ACW-R to find out which of them is the best close quarter carbine. Determining which carbine is the best for close quarter combat in Battlefield 4 is no simple task, and many of you would argue that the 4 weapons I have listed are not a complete set of close quarter carbines for Battlefield. Some of you may add that the Groza 1 should definitely be featured in this weapon showdown. However, I have excluded it because in my experience in playing Battlefield, it is an unpractical weapon. Even though it has this extremely high damage model paired with a relatively high rate of fire of 725, make this the ultimate close quarter king of the carbines. The problem with this weapon, however, is that because of its extremely high recoil, often even hitting those targets in close quarter when they are behind some form of cover or head glitching is near impossible, making this weapon at a serious disadvantage in most situations when compared to the other 4 weapons we will be looking at today. So that is the reason why the Groza 1 isn't featured in this list. It would technically be the winner if Battlefield had maps which did not have any kind of cover other than solid walls, meaning that you always have to expose your entire body when shooting, but because Battlefield has so many boxes and places to hide behind or to head glitch from, the Groza 1 is in my opinion an impractical weapon. So let's start with the A91. This weapon features an 800 round per minute fire rate and a muzzle velocity of 470. Now the muzzle velocity is pretty average for a carbine, as well as its damage model that starts at 24 and ends at 15.4, with the damage drop off starting at 8 meters and ending at 50 meters. This damage model is shared by all carbines we're going to be comparing today, so there won't be any differences there. But besides the lower but still adequate fire rate, this weapon features a very long reload time, an unusually long reload time. If you still have 1 bullet in the chamber or more, you're featuring here a 2.7 second reload, longer than any of the other weapons we will be looking at today, and with a serious hindrance when in close quarter combat, and a 3.35 second reload if you completely empty your magazine, which is pretty insane given that this weapon is only an 800 round per minute fire rate weapon. Recoil is where this weapon can shine, with 0.3 degrees pull vertically and 0.35 both left and right. This weapon does have a little bit of a kick to it, but nothing in comparison to its competition, and because of its equal pull left and right, it is relatively easy to use at medium ranges and middle distances. And the strength of this weapon is its low first shot recoil multiplier at 2.0. This is the lowest of all the weapons we're going to be looking at today, and helps this weapon in tap fire situations, basically allowing this weapon to also be used at medium ranges, something some of the competing carbines here cannot. Let's move on then to the SG-553. This weapon is in many respects similar to the A91. It shares, of course, the same damage model as mentioned earlier. It has a similar yet slightly higher rate of fire of 830 rounds per minute, a magazine size, of course, at 31, as all of our carbines do here today. The exact same muzzle velocity of 470 meters per second, but that is also where the similarities between these 2 weapons end, because one of the big differentiations is the reload time. This weapon features a 2.15 second reload time if you have 1 or more bullets left, and a 2.65 reload time if you have no bullets left. Of course, much quicker than an A91, and vital when it comes to close quarter combat. The recoil patterns are also slightly different here. You've got 0.34 vertical recoil, slightly higher than the A91, however not significantly, and a recoil of 0.25 to the left, which is much less, of course, than the A91, yet a recoil to the right of 0.39, meaning that these left and right recoil patterns are very unbalanced, meaning the weapon will generally pull to the right. The last thing to be mentioned is the first shot recoil multiplier at 2.3. It is higher than the A91, however not the highest we're going to be seeing today. So the SG-553 is already slightly more close quarter than the A91, not quite as capable at mid-range, but still capable enough, and definitely more capable than some of the weapons we're going to be looking at next. The next weapon we're going to be looking at is the ACW-R, sporting an 880 rounds per minute rate of fire. It is already much higher than the SG-553 and A91, and thus, of course, better for close quarter combat. It has the same magazine size of 31 bullets, or 30+1, as all of the guns have we're going to be looking at today, and a slightly yet insignificant muzzle velocity of 500 meters per second. Where the things get interesting with this gun is when it comes to reload times. It has a reload time with 1 or more bullets left of 1.83 seconds, making it one of the fastest reload times in Battlefield 4. This is of course ideal for close quarter situations, and this gun similarly has an extremely fast reload of 2.15 seconds if you have no bullets left. This basically blows the competition out of the water when it comes to reload times. Another interesting thing here of course is recoil, and to compensate for these extremely fast reload times, it has a relatively high and, I guess you could say, unpractical recoil pattern. With 0.41 degrees vertical recoil, it is the highest of all the guns we're looking at today, and with a recoil of 0.45 to the left and 0.3 to the right, it's quite difficult to manage because of the difference as with the SG553, and it is actually one of the most extreme recoils that we are looking at today. The first shot recoil multiplier is almost the highest, just slightly missing out behind the MTAR-21 at 2.5. You're definitely going to be using something like an angled foregrip on this weapon because it kicks quite a bit. So this weapon is limited in its range ability. It is definitely not as capable at mid-range as the A91 or the SG553, simply because of the higher recoil pattern and higher first shot recoil multiplier, making tap firing very difficult on this weapon as well. Lastly, of course, we have the MTAR-21. This weapon has the highest fire rate of all the carbines we're looking at today, with 900 rounds per minute, a standard magazine size of 30+1, and also the highest muzzle velocity at 510 meters per second. Once more, however, given that we are talking about close quarter carbines, the muzzle velocity is relatively irrelevant for this weapon. When it comes to reload, you've got a relatively long reload of 2.35 seconds with 1 or more bullets left, and a quite hefty reload of 2.75 seconds if you have no bullets left. This is of course still better than the A91, however is beat out by both the SG553 and of course the blazing fast ACW-R. The recoil on this weapon is relatively high, yet not so extreme when comparing to the ACW-R. With 0.34 pull vertically, it's not that bad, especially given that this is the same that the SG553 has and only beaten out by the A91. However, it has a recoil of 0.42 to the left and 0.42 to the right, making this, although even recoil, basically impossible to compensate for and impossible to use at medium ranges. It also has a relatively high first shot recoil multiplier of 2.6, so an angled grip is definitely a necessity here, and tap firing is likely going to be very difficult. So let's try to come to some kind of conclusion here. What is the best close quarter carbine here? Well, it depends on your definition of close quarter. If close quarter is exclusive close quarter, it really is only a race between the MTAR-21 and the ACW-R. If, however, you find yourself also engaging mid-range targets from time to time and don't want to be at a too significant disadvantage, it really is a race between the A91 and SG553. So playing these weapons is simply a matter of knowing their strengths and weaknesses, because they all are very capable weapons in Battlefield 4. The A91 is the all-rounder. It does have that significant weakness of long reload time, so if you're playing chaotic close quarter maps where you're constantly engaging multiple targets at close range, this gun is not the one for you. However, if you're looking for a more balanced weapon that is also capable at longer distances, or better than the comparison weapons we're looking at today, then the A91 is a weapon for you. And I've had lots of fun running around on different game modes using this A91 independent of situations. If you're finding that reload time to be that tick too long and you're getting killed too often because of it, the SG553 is still a capable carbine to use also at mid-range, so you don't have to sacrifice too much of your range potential by getting a little better reload time. However, if it's close quarter exclusive, it's a really difficult choice you're going to have to make. MTAR or ACW-R. Their hipfire is relatively similar, but the MTAR does have a slight edge, being a slightly better hipfire weapon. So if you're standing up, moving and firing this weapon at hipfire, you've got an accuracy of 2.25 versus 2.5 on the ACW-R. How much of a difference this is going to make at close quarter? probably nothing. So my personal preference for extreme close quarter is the ACW-R, simply because of that blazing fast reload that has saved my ass many a time. However, if you're somebody who thinks that those 20 extra rounds of fire rate and that slightly better hip fire are a better choice, or if you simply really like the recoil pattern more, you find that the even left and right recoil is easier to manage, or that the horizontal recoil being slightly less is a better choice for you if your horizontal recoil management isn't quite as good, go for the MTAR-21. You won't be at a disadvantage. So I thought I would mention real quick before we get to the end of this video why I haven't covered the aiming down sight accuracy and moving hip fire accuracy of these weapons in too much detail. It's because they're basically very similar. It's somewhere in between 0.3 to 0.35 for aiming down sight while not moving, and somewhere in between 2.25 to 2.5 when hip firing, standing up and moving. So you can expect relatively similar results from all these weapons. None of this is really competitive to a PDW if you're trying to get the best hip firing weapon, or aiming down sight. Of course, if you're looking at an assault rifle, they usually come in at 0.2 or 0.25 accuracy, so they're not as accurate, but given we're talking about close quarters, maybe medium range weapons, it is plenty. And with that, everything that can be said has been said. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have personal experiences with these carbines or are in disagreement to what I have been saying today, please leave a comment down below. I will be interested to see what your opinion are on my list and my analysis of the weapon strengths and weaknesses. But otherwise, feel free to subscribe to this channel, and I hope to see you in the next Battlefield 4 video.